Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and driving. So I drive back and forth to work each day. I drive on the weekends. I drive a lot. It wasn't always that way, but it's been that way for a while, and it got me thinking recently though. There's a lot of math going on, right? And well, you can say that about anything really, but I find when I start thinking about it, it makes whatever I'm doing a bit more cooler to me. Um, so when it comes to driving, it's mathematical right off the jump. Like the reason why it's even a thing in the first place, because the big idea is we want to get to places faster, right? That's a big thing. Um, and there's math in that. There's math in the speeds at which we're going to those places, right? There's math in the distance between us and where that destination is. There's math in the time that it takes to get there. There's math in that relationship between distance, time, and speed, right? Just math all in that, right? And when we're driving, there's so much going on. There's math in the cars that we're in their specs, like how fast they can actually go, how they handle. There's math in the brakes and how that all connects. We're getting increasingly technologically advanced cars over the years, and there's math and how everything functions. And when we're driving, there's a lot for us to consider, right? There's math and where our hands are. There's math in the pressures that we're applying, and math in the pressures that are applying to us. There's math in the roads that we take. There's math in our decisions to, take those roads. And there's math with dealing in traffic, and we have to pay attention to so much, right? So there's math in how our mirrors work, right? What they're reflecting, what we're seeing, and our ability to perceive how close things are. There's math in us being able to focus on what's going forward, but also taking glasses to the side, taking glasses to the right, and also looking behind us. I think I hit my glasses. I'm pretty sure I did. But anyway, um, there's math in the act of driving. There's math in what we're driving in, and there's math in that decision to drive in the first place and what we're getting out of it. So, right, we live in a world where things are branched out, and while remote work is becoming more of an increased thing, a lot of times we have to get transportation to our work, and chances are we unless we're walking or taking the bike, right, we're either driving or we're using public transportation, in which case someone else is. Either way, driving is involved, and so is math. And so we're either giving up a decent amount of money potentially to get that car so we can save time, or we're spending less money but we're using more time. And I know for me, I've been there making those decisions. Like, there was a point where I was making enough and I saved up enough to buy a car, but because of public transport, I'm like, I didn't have that need. But there was a point in my past where, I kid you not, I was working 5 jobs, one of them being full time, some of them technically not being, or officially not being full time, but technically they might as well have been. But I mentioned that because it made me think back then. Because there was one job where I would have to take a bus and then a light rail and then take a walk to get there, right? And it took me like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there. And I had another job where the school had a free shuttle and I was able to use that. So I wasn't paying additional money there, so it didn't make sense for me to get a car. And it wasn't that far from where I was at. But with the place where I had some of the other jobs though, that was 2 hours out of my life, coming and going. So really four. So at a certain point, I had to decide what I wanted to do, right? So I ended up spending more money on a car so I could use that, but it cut down on my time, right? And I think it was a sound investment because it also broadened up where I could get jobs, right? And that's a big thing. Because when you're out there getting a job, right, you're not just making money, you're spending it to be able to make that money. And so you have to make some decisions there, and whether or not you're going to be driving is part of that. And I didn't really mention it before, but you could do Uber or Lyft or any rideshare sort of deal. And, there's money in that, and it's usually more expensive than public transportation, depending on where you're going. But you may want to consider that sometimes, right? Or, you could be the one driving, and you got to consider the math in that too, right? Because you're making money, you're using these cars, but you have to weigh your options and what's good for you and what works. But so yeah, it's like there's math across the board, both in driving and the things surrounding it. Because with the driving, there's a lot of physics involved. There's physics in what your car is doing, but there's physics in what you're doing as well. And if you're playing music in a car, there's math in that too, right? Because there's math in the music itself and how it's composed and how it's getting to you. And if you blast your music in your car like I do, and you have a decent speaker setup, then you're going to feel that bass, and you have to decide how it makes you feel while you're driving, right? Either way, right? There's a lot of math in how that's all functioning and flowing, and then there's math in getting the car itself. There's math in the roads, math in how they were designed, math in why speed limits are a thing. Because sometimes, yes, safety, but also sometimes they might be this or that because trying to conserve gas, which is a longer story for another video. But my whole thing is like there's math and those sort of things. And speaking of the speed limit, like right, there's math in you knowing what that is, and being able to read what your car is doing with that and feel it sometimes. There's math in violating that sometimes. Math in the money that's being made off of that sometimes. Math in the safety and the risk, and analyzing that when you're driving around. But even if you yourself are not driving, other people are, right? Or you might need to have someone else drive you somewhere, right? And there's math in that and how that all works. Because, right, the person's taking time, but they might also be getting paid. And so there's math in how all that goes. And also there's math not only in the speed of the car that you're in, but also how much it weighs. And I think we do not respect that enough. And I say that because I've seen people drive like complete and total lunatics, even though we're in these cars that weigh thousands of pounds sometimes, right? Literal tons. And it's like, we don't value that enough. Where's our number sense in that sometimes, right? We take it for granted that we're driving around in these crazy, like, heavy vehicles. But, there's math in that too, like how much these cars weigh. And then, I could do a whole video on cars itself, right? But there's math in driving, math in the decision to drive, math in the decisions that you're making while you drive. There's math in decisions that other people are making while you drive and while they drive. There's math in just about everything involved in that. And then, of course, there's getting to that point where you could legally drive in the first place, right? And there's math in the test that you have to take, what you need to score, what that means to the people scoring that test. And there's math in how long you get to keep your license, how much you pay for it. And again, there's math in the speed limit, like, following that or just knowing how that all works, right? There is math in just everything. And I think that it's kind of wild that we don't talk about that stuff nearly enough. But that's also kind of the point of a lot of what I do. So it's all good because I do want to change that. So yeah, I don't want to belabor the point home too much, but it's just like I hope this video made you think a bit more about driving and how math is there all the time, even if we're not writing it down, even if we're conscious of it or not. And I think that's awesome. I think that's special. I'll see you in the next video. Professor Prime out.